Oh! It's you again. Welcome back. If you've been wondering why I don't have a class on perspective yet, well, I was wondering the same thing too. So in this week's YouTube Art School episode, I'll show you how to draw simple perspective and how you can use that to draw cool cityscapes, streets, buildings, or various objects and props. It's just a little bit of knowledge that opens up a ton of new doors. So let's get right into it. Oh, class is starting. All right, class is in session. Pay attention. I think most artists get spooked by perspective at first. It seems so technical. The good news is that there's actually very little to learn to master it. Unlike anatomy, for example, where it just seems like there's an infinity of things to learn. In this week's class, I'll show you the basics of perspective, like what the horizon is, what are vanishing points, vanishing lines, and then we'll construct a simple scene using 1 point perspective. And in just about 10 minutes, you'll have all the tools to do it the same. Now, that's good value, so make sure you pay the class fee of either 1 like or 1 sub. Don't stiff me, bro. Let's start with the basics. We're all familiar with the horizon, right? The line that separates land and sky, or water and sky. Where we place the horizon in our drawings will always have a big impact on the scene. When you look at the horizon, it's always going to be at eye level, as a general rule. If we were to draw the horizon right in the middle of our canvas here, we'd have a pretty balanced scene. Seeing the horizon right down the middle indicates that we're not looking up or down, we're just looking straight ahead at eye level. It's not particularly dynamic, but sometimes we don't want dynamism. But what's cool with this knowledge though is that we can use it to introduce an imbalance in our scene. Let's say we place the horizon really high on the canvas, as a result showing more of the land and less of the sky. This mimics like a bird's eye view almost, as if we're looking down, focusing on the ground. It makes the subject, the scene that we're looking at, feel smaller, like an adult looking down at a child maybe, or a king looking down at peasants from high up in his castle. The opposite is also interesting when we place the horizon low on the canvas to suggest that we're looking up towards the sky, placing less of an emphasis on the ground. This almost makes us feel like diminished, like gazing at something grandiose. And it's great to show that something is massive. Let's say you're drawing a tall statue. Well, that statue will look a lot more imposing if we choose a low horizon than if you were to choose a high one. So the placement of the horizon sets the tone for the drawing. Now, if you've ever seen a photo like this, you've probably noticed a lot of the lines in the scene all seem to converge towards a single point here. That point is actually called a vanishing point, and then all of those lines formed by the silhouette of the buildings that seemed like all aimed at the vanishing point, well, we call those vanishing lines. If a line is perfectly parallel to the side of the canvas though, like horizontal or vertical, well, that's not a vanishing line. Vanishing lines always go towards a vanishing point. Depending on the photo or depending on your drawing, you might have a single vanishing point like this, maybe 2 vanishing points, 3 of them, 4, 5. The more you have, obviously, the harder the perspective is to draw, so we'll stick to 1 in this class. It's already more than enough to draw a lot of cool different scenes. But there's also a lot of really cool drawings that we can do with more than 1 vanishing point, so it's definitely worth learning. We don't have time in this short YouTube video, but I do teach all of that stuff, and I go into a lot more details and examples in my art program that's on sale until the end of the month to celebrate its 5-year anniversary. Check the link in the video description if you're interested to seriously level up your art without breaking the bank. Perspective is only one of the many topics that it covers. It's a massive program equivalent in content to what you would find in a Bachelor of Fine Arts, but arguably a lot better, and with a heavy focus on digital art. The price is going up at the end of the month to reflect all the new content that I've been adding recently, so don't miss out on the best deal of the year so far. It won't ever be this cheap again. Now, with the knowledge that we have so far, we should be able to draw a simple box in 1 point perspective. Drawing buildings and objects in perspective will use the same logic, so let's start with simplest volume possible to see how that works. First, we'll need a horizon, then a vanishing point. Anywhere on that line works. Just keep in mind that the vanishing point in 1 point perspective is always going to be somewhere on the horizon. That wouldn't work. So from here, we'll start with a square, starting only with one side of the box. So far, no perspective. But what's interesting with this though is that we can now draw some lines all originating from the vanishing point, some vanishing lines that will extend from the horizon all the way to each of the 4 corners of our square. These lines will be responsible for turning this 2D square into a 3D box. With this, now we can decide the depth of our box by arbitrarily adding a corner along one of these 4 vanishing lines. Now we have the width, the height, and the depth of our box. Now, how do we draw the other lines to complete the box? Well, we already have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th corner of our box. So considering the width here is horizontal, just like the other side of the box here, we can just extend that line until it reaches the next vanishing line. To find our 6th corner, you probably see where I'm going with this, but the height of the box follows the same logic. We can start from either of the new corners that we created and go straight down until the line intersects with the next vanishing line. And then what we're left here is another square, identical except larger. You've probably noticed before, that things tend to look smaller the farther away they are from you, or the closer they are to the horizon. And the same logic applies here. The side of the box closest to us is the bigger side, and well, the side closest to the vanishing point on the horizon is smaller. It's that difference that makes this feel 3D. So let's clean this up, erase the vanishing lines that we used as guides, and then we're left with a nice box in 1-point perspective. I drew this below the horizon, but the same logic applies if I drew it above too. And of course, it works just the same if the box is right over the horizon with a portion of itself both above and below. But that's not all. With this as a starting point, what if we wanted to cut one of the corners of this box? Using 2 different vanishing points, I can easily do that. See? Now, all I need to do next is erase the part that's been chopped off, and we get a modified box. Then let's say I do the same on the other side to create a pointy roof, and now we have this simple house shape. Pretty cool, right? This doesn't quite look like a building though, but adding a bunch of details to it can quickly change that. And then when you know how to draw a box, considering most buildings have similar blocky shapes, well, you can draw a lot of different types of buildings. Knowing how to draw simple boxes and then using vanishing lines to carve into those will allow you to draw all sorts of things. And let's do just that now. Let's use the knowledge that we have so far to draw a street full of buildings. I'll start with the street, which is basically just one side of a box, the bottom of it. The street will start, for now, at the vanishing point and extend towards us this way. Now, on either side of the street, I can repeat the process I showed you for drawing a box. That's going to be the first building on the street. Just a simple box so far. But as you know, we can then carve into this to make it more interesting. What if I wanted the pointy roof to be in a different direction though? As if the building was facing the streets this time. One trick that's very useful to know in perspective is how to find the center of any side of a box. And it's super easy too. All we gotta do is connect the opposite corners and X marks the spot. This point here is the center of that face. For any 4-sided face, that will work, whether it's warped because of the perspective or not. So if I chop that box in half and then I want to find out where the center is, well, you could still do the same thing, connect the new corners and X marks the center. I'll use this trick to find out where the center is here on that side, since that will mark the tip of my roof. From there, I can just cut my box and use the new corners for the bottom part of the roof. Connect these points, erase the stuff I no longer need, and I'm left with a house with a pointy roof facing the street. That's the power of basic perspective. Start simple and then use cuts to carve in more details. Spend a couple hours on this and, well, everything in this scene used the same logic, down to the smallest details. You start with the big shapes, lay out the scene, and then the medium details, and then the smaller details. Starting with big boxes and carving out some details. With some time and patience, you can get a really cool environment using only the basic perspective knowledge that you learned today. How cool is that? Now, I went a little crazy here for sure, but it's to show you how such basic theory on perspective can allow you to draw something that seems very far from basic. And well, this is too tempting for me. Let's just maybe add some colors, some ambient occlusion, some shadows, some extra polish, and boom! We have a super cute village street using 1-point perspective. The coloring is pretty rough, but at a distance, I think it looks alright. Maybe. Anyways, this is going to wrap it up for this week's class. I hope that was helpful. And now hopefully you see the power of learning or knowing perspective, all the cool things that it can allow you to do. Perspective isn't so scary after all, is it? Also, since you've been a good student and followed until the end, I'm giving away one of my 2 custom brush sets for absolutely free. You can find the link to it in the video description. Use them responsibly. Also, there's not much time left, so don't forget to check out my art program before the end of the...